open source software like Inkscape is really very aligned with organizer work because of the way it's updated and maintained. It's free, it's meant to be for the people, and it's kind of for the people, of the people, by the people. Um, Illustrator, that's a good software as well. It is paid, which is, it's a good piece of software, but it also is, you know, it might be prohibitive for some people to use because of the cost, whereas Inkscape is free. So why don't I start by showing you how I start working on something in Inkscape. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen really quick and just give you kind of ooh, we have someone who uses Autodesk Sketchbook. That's cool. So a typical scenario for me might be Charlie emails me saying, hey, we have an inhale exhale coming up. Can you make a flyer for that? So instead of working from scratch, what I have, and I'll share my screen as soon as I get this set up here, I have something like a starter kit, which helps me. It has everything I need to make something for ohvoice specifically, so that I don't have to remake things. Like, it has all the right colors and some of the images that I might use. So why don't I go ahead and share my screen. So this is what Inkscape looks like when you have a starter kit made. And this is not what it's going to look like the first time you open up Inkscape, and we'll get to that. Just going to close out some of these. So what you'll see here is I kind of have the ohvoice logo so that I can use this as I need to. I have some icons that we frequently use, so a black power fist, some hands coming together. These are images that we use sometimes, so I have them on deck. I also have all the colors that ohvoice uses. These are our accepted colors: white, blue, a different shade of blue, and yellow. And then I also have these different sizes of flyers. So every different social media platform has a specific size that works best for making sure the most number of people see it and to retain the best amount of quality. And so it's a good idea to have those when you make a starter kit. So those are the main things that I put in here. And as you move forward, you might want to put more stuff and different things. But really, a logo, some icons, your colors, and the different sizes, that's what you're going to want to need. That's the important stuff. So let's talk about how do we go ahead and make one of these. Just so that we don't have to work from scratch every time we make a flyer or anything. So I'm going to open a new document, and this is probably what you're going to see when you open up Inkscape the first time. Let me share here. So in the chat, I'd like for y'all to drop if this is something like what you're seeing, and also I'd like some thoughts on what kind of organization we might want to create a logo for, because we're just going to jump right into it and make a logo. So while you're doing that, I'm going to make some columns. So the way I'm going to do this, I'm going to use this text tool. It's on the left side. It's this A. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to click in the white area. Oops, didn't mean to double click. And then I'm just going to go ahead and start typing. So I'm going to make an area for the logo. And that text is pretty small. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go all the way up to the top left and click on this mouse. And now I can select things. And I'm going to select this bottom right arrow. I'm going to press Control on my keypad and then drag that. What this is doing, it's letting me enlarge this text without changing the dimensions. If I let go of the control and then do it, you'll see it doesn't retain the dimension. So it might get stretched out. And sometimes you might want to do that, but sometimes you have something and you like it the way it is and you don't want to change the dimensions. So I'm gonna undo that. So a hold the seat event, maybe a logo for the Supreme Court seat, or honoring RBG. Okay, that's certainly something. I'll maybe yeah, we could do that. Yeah. So I'm gonna let that kind of float around in my head for a bit. and then make the rest of these logos. And in the meantime, I'm just going to just show you some more tricks in Inkscape. So I have one piece of text. I'm going to make another piece of text, and I want it to be the same size. So I'm going to select this logo text, and I'm going to press Control D. I'm on a Mac, so I'm going to press Command D. Oh, I'm Michelle. I'm going to use it. I just had to think about it. So once I press Command D, it's duplicated this text, and now I'm going to move it over, and I want it to be in line. So I'm going to press Control and then drag it, so it stays in line. If you try to drag without pressing Control, you might end up just bringing it anywhere on the screen, which you know, again, it might be something you want, but sometimes you just want things to be nice and in line. And this one will make it be our icons. So this is just a place for me to drop. I'm going to do this 2 more times. And this one will be colors. And one last time. And this one will be for the different sizes. So let's think about how to make this logo. So why don't we start with the text? And so Michelle had a great suggestion. It's going to be hold the seat. It's a very interesting thing to make a logo for. So I'm going to blow this up, and I'm going to experiment with a few different fonts. Now, I can't show you everything that you can do with Inkscape in the span of 1 hour, but Inkscape is really great at letting you put in new fonts however you want. So I highly recommend just go online to a website like Fontbook and look for different fonts that you like, and you can download them and put them into Inkscape with really no problem. So I'm going to just try looking at this with a few different fonts. So when you click on this A that is for editing text, you get the option to change the font up here on the top. So let's try this font. Might be one thing, we don't know. Let's try something else. Maybe that didn't really change anything. That's probably not going to be the one, but you know, just get an option. And the one I probably would use for something like this would be this one, just something nice and bold. So we have some font options, and you're going to want to go ahead and save at this point, just to make sure you don't lose everything you've done so far. So I'm going to put this on my desktop for using later, and we'll just call it October 20 Lunch and Learn. So when to save, what you'll notice is your Inkscape file, it has this extension called SVG. And if you're into web design, this could be something useful to you. So I'm not going to get into that too much right now, but it's something you're going to want to keep an eye on for the future. So to make a logo, there's 2 different ways you can kind of go about this. You can make some shapes and try and draw something. You have a rectangle tool up here. You know, you can try just making a chair. I'll make like a rectangle. Oh, I have it set to transparent. So you have to select your colors down here. So I'll make it a black rectangle. It looks like my opacity is down. So when you use Inkscape a lot, you probably have it set to different things that most people might not immediately want. So what I just did is I changed the opacity using the fill and stroke tool. To get to that, you're going to want to go to Object and Fill and Stroke, and then you'll get a dialog on the right side, which lets you change the opacity. So this is one way you could go about making a logo. Just draw something until you have something that you like. You can draw circles or whatever. I don't really like to do that because, one, I'm not really much of an artist. I tend to do better with having things to edit instead of actually creating things. Some of you may be artists, and that's great. But if you aren't, then sometimes the best way to do it is to just take stuff off the internet and then change it to something that works for you. So it sounds like I'm suggesting you plagiarize, but I'm really not. I'm just saying you can use the internet to get something as a starting point, and then you can edit it from there. So what do I mean? Let's go to Google and let's just look for, chair PNG. So I usually put in PNG because that gives me the best results for something with simple lines, or you can even say chair clip art. These are not really Supreme Court chairs. This one, not bad. For the sake of just trying something, let's use this one. So we're just gonna go ahead and save this to our downloads and go back into Inkscape, and we're going to import it. So I don't know if any of you noticed, but you can see clearly now, this is a, first of all, this is not a picture with a transparent background, and it's also a JPEG, which is not very easy to work with. I'm getting a little feedback. So the other thing you can do, I think this was off of a clip art website. So I'm just going to go to the clip art site, try to get it with a transparent background. Yeah. So, we live in a digital age. Pretty much everything that you might want, you can get easily. And we'll try and import it again. Yeah, so that one, when I say transparent background, I mean the white space in the image is not actually white, but transparent. So you can see the text behind it, or whatever is behind it is behind it. Now this is a good starting place. We have a chair. Now we might not like the colors or how it's made, and that's totally cool. We can change it. And the way to do this is with probably the best tool that Inkscape has to offer. And this is not something you're going to find in Canva. You might, if you use Illustrator or Autodesk, you might have something like this. But for those of us who use Inkscape, we have a tool called Trace Bitmap. So you're going to want to go to the Path menu and click on Trace Bitmap. Now what this does, it takes the image that you selected. I clicked on the chair and then I opened Trace Bitmap, and it's going to convert what it thinks is a bitmap image. So we had a discussion about vectors versus rasters, and it's going to convert it into a vector image. So I usually like to use something like auto trace. And what that does, it just gives a very rough sketch of this image. And if we click OK, we should get a very simplistic rendering. Oh, I can't. Gotta move this. So this is probably too simple, and it doesn't look that great. So we should try again. And instead of using single scan, which will really just make a vector with one color, we'll try multiple scans. And we're gonna use this drop-down menu. So we have different options here. Brightness steps will make different scans of this image based on the different values for brightness. Colors, grays, those will do the same thing but for colors. And auto trace is going to try and assign vector values to every single point on the image, so it can take a while, and it's not really something you're going to want to do for a multiple scan. If you have something with a single color or two colors, you can try using auto trace on single scan. But let's try making this in gray. And let's see what that gives us. Okay, so we have something here. That's not bad. It's not really a judge chair, but we can work with this. So once you have something like this, you can actually ungroup it. And how do I do that? And what does that even mean? So when you have vector images, sometimes you can group objects together by pressing Control G, or if you're on a Mac, Command G. And all that does is it lets you treat it all as one group. And when you do this trace bitmap thing, you actually generate something that is a group of different scans. It scans the image multiple times and then gives you a grouping of different layers of that. So you can ungroup. I just press Command U to ungroup, and then you can drag these away to see what the different components of this are. Now it looks like probably you're going to have to keep it all as one thing. Frankly, I don't see a lot to work with that one. So I'm gonna, for the sake of time, I'm gonna trash this idea because you can play with these things for hours and it does take a long time. Making a logo is no joke. And instead, I'm going to make a very generic kind of, movement for Black Lives kind of logo. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to look up a black power fist. That's a picture. And when you're using the trace bitmap function, the size of the image doesn't really matter. And I'm also going to look up some roots. That this one looks good. We'll just save that. And we'll go ahead and import those two into Inkscape just to make a very quick and dirty, not dirty, clean, a quick icon or logo. And once we have those, we're going to do the same exact thing. And since these are both one single color, we can do this pretty quickly. Again, we're going to go to Path, Trace Bitmap, Single Scan, Auto Trace, Update. So we have the right thing, press OK. And we have a black power fist that, now let's just so you can see the difference. With this one that I got straight from the internet, first of all, it doesn't have a transparent background. And if I blow it up really big, it doesn't look that great because you can kind of see these little pixely lines. So it doesn't work for a logo that you might want to put on multiple different things and use in different sizes. But this one that I'm moving around that I got from using the trace bitmap function, it has a transparent background and I can blow it up as big as I want and it looks great. It looks very clean. So we're going to do the same exact thing to these roots. We're going to trace bitmap and update. And we got some roots and they're clean and we can expand them in size. Now, when you have this kind of tool made, these are not vector images, you can use something called the node tool, which is right under the selected transform objects tool. So when you make a trace bitmap, you actually create an image made up of a number of different nodes. So I can actually edit these nodes. I can expand them as I see fit. And this way, I can take something from the internet and I can make it my own without, I don't want to cheat off people, right? You don't want to make something for your organization and then not have it be yours. What if we put the word? Oh, I'm sorry, Michelle. I think it's a great idea. I just think it would take me a lot longer than 20 minutes to come up with a good logo. So Sophia asks, do we have to save images or can we copy and paste? You can copy and paste. I prefer to save it just because Inkscape is known for crashing if you paste too many things in, because what you do is you create a dependency between a web page and the object inside the actual document. So it's better to save it and then import it in so it's part of the SVG file. If you're just doing something for like a 5-minute flyer and you have all the elements and you just need one thing from the internet, it's probably fine. But I really don't recommend you copy and paste multiple images because you could create a problem. So let's do the same thing with this fist right here, maybe just to kind of narrow it so it fits on our roots. Let's see, take this guy. Oh, we got a node here that we gotta kind of, oh, that's not right. And the great thing is, like any other editing software, you have Control Z at your disposal, and you should definitely use it every time you make a mistake. And you will make mistakes. If you're doing it right, you're going to make mistakes. That's part of making. So yeah, I think we can kind of get these to look like they're the same thing. Yeah. So all we're doing here is we're just kind of bringing the nodes together and joining them so that it looks like the fist is coming from the roots, you know? Just a very simple kind of iconography. And then once we have that, I noticed that they don't exactly look like the right color. So I'm going to take the roots, I'm going to click on the eyedropper, and what this does, it lets you take a selected object and change the color based on something else. So I'm going to click that, and then I'm going to click on the black power fist. So now they're the same shade of black. I don't know if any of you noticed that issue, but if you spend some time with these things, you start to notice some of this stuff, and it really does bug you. And then I want to make sure these are the same thing, as in the same object. So I'm going to select both, to do which I have the root selected. So I'm going to press Shift and then click on the fist. And now I'm going to press Command G. On a Windows computer, it might be Control G. And there you go. There's definitely some room for improvement. You know, it doesn't look exactly very clean, but now you know you can use nodes to edit the shape of something once you trace the bitmap and make it into a vector. You know, if I were spending some more time on this, I would definitely clean it up. But, you know, I don't want to take up too much time here because there is like 2 more things I want to go through. And we're already at 12:40. Yeah. So once you have this, the next thing you really want to think about is colors. And a tool I like to use for colors is called Peloton. So when you're picking colors, the first thing you're probably going to want to do is look at other organizations and groups that do work similar to yours. So like, oh, do we have something in the chat? Would that copy paste problem apply to other programs like Autodesk? Yes. Autodesk probably has a better way to handle it than Inkscape, but I wouldn't recommend it. I know Illustrator does a really good job. The whole Adobe suite does a very good job with pasting stuff in, but it also is very resource intensive. So if you have a basic computer, it's gonna start making that loud fan noise and heat up. I don't recommend it. So let's say this is a group that's affiliated with ohvoice. So, you know, you might just go to ohvoice and look at what colors we're using. It looks like we really like this blue. So I'm just going to take a screenshot. If you're on a Windows, it's probably Control-Shift-S. On a Mac, you can press Command-Shift-4 and take a selected screenshot. Command-Shift-3 would probably give you a full screen screenshot. And then I'm going to import that picture that I just took into Inkscape because I want to take a look at what color ohvoice is using. Now I know what color ohvoice uses because I do these. But for the sake of argument, like you see a color that you like or a color that you might want to use as part of your idea. What you can do is bring that into Inkscape and then use that same eyedropper tool and just hover over it. And you'll see in the very bottom of Inkscape, you see some numbers. It says crosshatch 5D64B5 alpha 1. I hope you can see that. It's under the colors, like it's under the workspace, under the colors. I'm gonna drag my mouse around it. Hopefully you can see what I'm talking about, but it's right now it says 00000. But that's what you can use to get, so that's hex code. And yeah, so apparently this color is 000A8A. So what you can do is put that into Peloton. So right here where it says base RGB, I'm going to say 000A8A8. A8A, I think is what it said. Or 98A, sure. 98A. I'm going to say okay. So that gives me a bunch of different shades that I can use. Now, right now, this tool that I'm looking at, and I'll put a link to it in the chat, if I can find the chat. Peloton. Well, that's good, Sophia. That copy and paste doesn't give you much problems. It really is a computer by computer basis based on how good your computer is and how much other stuff you have running in the background. I usually have like a bunch of tabs open and I just don't want to push it, but whatever works. Copy and paste is not the worst option. It's a very good option. So yeah, in Peloton, so right now I have this set at monochromatic. You can also get some complementary colors by using adjacent color function or the triad function or the tetrad function. So I'm not hating this tetrad function. It's a little iffy. I might want to move this around so you can see I can move the colors around and get it to a place where I like it. That's not bad. I might want to try the triad. That's not bad. And again, these are just to give you initial ideas. I'm not saying you have to stick to these colors, but once you have something like this, you can press you can get a screenshot and then bring that in, and those can be your initial colors. So I'm going to import that screenshot, and now I have some colors. So I'm going to clean this up a bit. I'm going to move this under colors, and I mean, this was a good idea, the whole deceit thing, and I definitely I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Oh, Michelle, if you want to talk more about this, I'd be more than happy to work on this with you. But yeah, so we have logo and we have colors. So what we can do is we can look at our logo in different colors, because we made this, and so we can change the color very easily. And we just use the same eyedropper trick. Click the eyedropper, maybe try this thing. That's kind of ugly. That's not bad. I like that color, actually. You can see some of the defects because what I did was pretty quick. But that's not bad. So, now you have some colors. And finally, you're going to want some sizes because you might be making a Facebook event. You might be sharing this on Instagram. You might be using Twitter. So what I'm doing here, I selected the rectangle tool. I'm just going to make a rectangle. I don't really care about the size right now. I'm going to push the opacity up to 100 though. And then I'm going to click on the rectangle tool again just to make sure that it's selected. And I'm going to give you the sizes that you're going to need. So when you share stuff on Facebook or Eventbrite, you're probably going to want to use a width of 1920 and a length of 1005. And that's going to be ideal for Facebook. And it looks pretty big. And the reason is because I did not change this to pixels. This is in millimeters, which is not what we want. You got to change that to pixels. There we go. Change that to pixels. And now let's do it. So 1920 pixels by 1005 pixels. There, that's better. It shouldn't have been that big. So that's going to be for Facebook. I'm just going to give you a little note down here. So Facebook 920 XP. That looks really small. Let's blow that up a little. So that's for Facebook, and email also if you want to share stuff by email. This size works pretty well on email. If you're making stuff for Eventbrite, that's going to actually be a little bigger. It's going to be 2160 by 1080 pixels. And just put that there. Eventbrite. That's 200. And if you're making stuff for Instagram, you can usually make it 1080 by 1080, but what I've noticed is the best size for Instagram is actually a long rectangle of about 1080 by 1350. For some reason, that really seems to catch the eye more, and it's within Instagram's preferred sizes. So put that in, not Insta, 1080 by 1350 pixels. And also Twitter. For Twitter, you can use bigger pictures, but it's going to take longer to load for people, and it's not worth it. You can just make it smaller. About 1200 by 675 is going to be the right size for a Twitter picture. But you can use one that's formatted for Facebook, and it won't be a problem. I wouldn't use the Eventbrite one. I don't think Instagram will actually let you upload something of that size, or Twitter won't let you upload something of that size. So I'm gonna leave that up, and in case you want to take some notes or just get a look at what those look like. So I'm gonna look at my notes to make sure that I've covered everything I wanted to tell you about. Okay, there's two more things I want to make sure that you know. So one thing is with text, say I have this Twitter text and I want it to fit in here. Now I could, and I do see people who just started using Inkscape do this, but I could just press Shift Enter and make a new line, and that glitched for some reason. I was working on some other thing where my line spacing was different, but I would recommend, and I know people who use Word also do this, where they just click Enter and make a new line, but you really want something more responsive. So if you have the text tool selected, you'll notice at the end of your block of text, there's this little diamond, and you can actually drag that to make a margin. So now it'll be responsive. So I can put more stuff in here, like this is a test, and it'll keep that margin instead of me having to keep making a new line. So that's definitely something that's useful to have. And also, there's this really useful tool called Clip and Mask. So say I have this fist, and I only need a small part of it. I'm gonna duplicate this box for the Insta and say I only really want this part for some reason. What I can do is select both of them. I'm gonna highlight both of them, and then I go up to here, Object, and I press Clip, and then Set. And what that gives me is just that part. So this is kind of like cropping. And there's a lot of different ways you can use this tool. You can select both of these and just kind of experiment with it, mask, set, inverse. And what that does, we've kind of thrown the color of this item onto it, although it came out gray for some reason. I'm not quite sure what happened there. But there's a lot of different things you can do with just the clip and mask options, and it's definitely one of those things that you should have in your repertoire. I'm not going to expand on that too much because we have about 10 minutes left. So how about I answer any questions you might have? Oh, there's some stuff in the chat. Quick question. Okay, so Sam has a question. Could copying and pasting between different programs ever alter the color codes? No. The color codes are generally in hex code. There's also another thing that called CMYK. If you work with like photography editing, you might run into that. But for the most part, no. You're not going to have a problem with the color codes changing. Sophia asks, how do you see or manage layers with Inkscape? So I didn't really use layers with Inkscape. You can, and you'll see there's a layer tool right here on the bottom. You can make new layers. Like you just go up to this layer tool, add a layer, and choose whether it's going to be above, below, or as a sublayer. And that's really how you manage layers. But I tend to work on the same layer when I'm using vectors because I like to use this whole area as my workspace. So I kind of do it on a object by object basis. So really, instead of layers, I kind of just rely on whether an object is in front of or behind something. So like right now, the fist is behind this rectangle. So what do? If I want it in front, I click on the fist, I click on object, and then I just click on raise to the top. And now it's in front. Oh, this is the JPEG, so it doesn't have a transparent background either. But instead of layers are great, but what layers are going to do, it's going to put a layer on top of this entire workspace. If that's what you want, great. You have that option. All I'm going to do, I'm going to add a layer, put it above the current one, and now I can, I'll put this thing here, and then maybe I'll say I don't want to see this layer anymore, and I can turn that layer off. But I am not a fan of using layers with Inkscape. I definitely prefer to use layers only with photography editing like Photoshop or GIMP, which is the open source version of Photoshop. But we're not talking about that today. I hope that answers your question, Sophia. So I'm not sure if this was a little rushed or anything, but I'm here if you have any other questions for the next few minutes. I can show you something that you might have had a question on. I'll put my email in the chat again. And also, we have other Lunch and Learns every month, and they're amazing. So I'm gonna put the link you can check every month. We have the info up there. That's actually a fairly new. Oh, that's wrong. It's not. We're not ohvoice.com. It's .org. So I'm gonna stop sharing, and that's really everything I have.
Just in case there were any questions, anyone. Okay, it is recording.
So the thing I forgot to show, one thing that you're going to want to know once you've made everything is how do you take it out of the Inkscape world? So you're going to export. So what you're going to want to do is select the thing that you've made that you want to take into the other virtual world. And then you go to File, Export PNG Image. And you want to make sure that you have the selection thing selected, not the page or the drawing.
I don't think your screen shared anymore if you're trying to share it. Is anybody else? Maybe it's mine.
I think you're right.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so what I was saying, once you have something made in Inkscape, you're going to want to export it so that you can use it in the rest of the digital world. So the way we do that is you select your image that you want to export into the real world, so to say, go to File, and then go to Export PNG Image. Make sure that you're exporting the selection instead of the page or the drawing. And then over here, you're going to see this thing. This is a key number right here. The DPI is dots per inch. 300 dots per inch is the best resolution you're going to get out of a vector image. Unfortunately, sometimes you might run into a problem where you export something. So obviously, you're going to want to click export from here to get it as a file, and you can change where it's saved to and what its name is using this file name area. But you can always change this dots per inch. I wouldn't go below 150, but the reason you might need to decrease it is because sometimes you have an image that is very large. For example, if you're making an Eventbrite flyer and it's very detailed, and you try to export it at 300 dots per inch, you might end up with something that's a few megabytes, and you're not going to be able to upload that or email it to your coworkers. So you might need to take it down to 200 or 180 dots per inch. That's just something to keep in mind. But you can click export as, pick a place. I'll pick the desktop and just say like test.png. It's very important that you also add in that .png. Especially if you're on a Mac. Windows should handle it without a problem. And then just click export, and it should take about, depending on the size of the image, it won't take more than a minute. But that's how you wrap up a Inkscape session. And don't forget to save your work either. Control S or Command S, depending on if you're on a Mac or a Windows. That's it.
We actually have one more question in the chat, asking
How to
about
put text
text on a photo or on the
Yeah. That's a great question. Could you maybe specify what kind of photo you mean? Like, is this a photo that you took with your camera, or
Laurel, I think you have the ability to unmute yourself too if you want to just ask directly or put it in the chat, whatever works.
on computers? Okay. Yeah, so I'll share my screen again. So I should have some kind of photo on my computer. I have some, let's see, what's that? No, that's not gonna, okay, that's a picture right there. So Laurel, let's say I have this picture that I want to put some text on. I'm gonna import the picture into Inkscape. Where did I put it? Okay, let's just use this one. So this is the Twitter logo, but let's pretend that this is a picture that I want to put text on. So I'm gonna blow it up. I press Control and drag this arrow. And then I'm gonna take some text that I've already written. So this Facebook thing that I've said right here, I'm gonna duplicate that with a Command D. And I'm just gonna drag it over onto the bird. Now you can't see it right now, so I'm gonna press Control and drag it to make it bigger. I'm gonna press the text button so that I can drag the margin so that all of it is within the bird. And then maybe I don't like the fact that it's, I don't like the text color, or maybe I don't like the thinness of the letters. So I'm going to change the text color to white, and then I'm going to go to fill and stroke, and I'm going to go to stroke paint, click on this to make sure that it has a color, and then I'm going to go to stroke style and just increase the width so that the letters appear a little thicker. And that is how you put text on a picture. I hope that answers your question. How do you rotate an object by something other than 90 degrees? Like if I want to tilt it a little to the left. Sure. Oh, I didn't even show y'all how to tilt. So I'm going to take this this black power fist. So when you click on something the first time, you have all these arrows around it that let you change the size. But if you just click on it one more time, you're going to get arrows that actually let you control the tilt. So you can just kind of drag that, and you said a little bit to the left, so there you go, a little bit to the left. There you go. So the answer is to use your select tool and click on it twice. And then you can also use the control button with these to make sure it only tilts in increments of 15 degrees, in case that's something you want. Like if you only want it 15 degrees to the left, exactly 15 degrees to the left, but maybe you want it 14, I don't know. But that's how you tilt. Looks like there's something else in the chat. I'm having trouble importing a photo from my Mac into the program. Could you explain a little more? Like, are you having trouble finding the photo, or is it not importing at all? I can't find my photos at all. Okay. As in, you don't know where they are on your computer, or you can't find them through the import tool on Inkscape? Where is the import tool? Okay, yeah. Sorry about that. So in Inkscape, you want to go up to this file up here in the top left, and then about halfway down the list is the import tool. So depending on where you put your photos, you might have them in your downloads, or they might be in pictures, or they might be in documents. They might be on your desktop, but that's really going to be on a case by case basis. So you're going to have to find out where you've put the photo on your computer, and then you should be able to import from there. So again, go to File, and then press on that import. It's about halfway down, right there. Does that answer your question, India? Maybe, maybe not.
So it's telling me that it can't connect to my photo library at all.
On your, oh, okay. So you have your photos put in the Apple like Photos program.
I mean, I suppose, I don't know. I when I'm on my MacBook, all my photos from my phone are like literally there every day. They update. It just says photos. But
Gotcha.
when I'm in this application, it does not give me the option. I don't see these photos at all.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. So let's share our screen here again. So I'm on a MacBook too, and the thing is, Apple is not a fan of open source things, so they make it a little tricky. So I'm gonna go into Photos, and I don't have any photos in here. Let's put a photo in here. Okay, so now I have a photo in here. So what you have to do is find out where it is in your like computer. So you're gonna have to go on Get Info, and should tell you from here. Maybe like, is this what your photos area looks like?
No, there's nothing there. If I go in from the app, there's nothing there. When I'm on my actual computer, I can see my photos. If I go into like if I go to make an email, I can simply add it as an attachment. But when I'm on this app, it doesn't, there are no photos to retrieve. So I'm not sure if I should just use not an Apple product, if it would just make it easier. But my photos are saved. So I just don't understand.
Yeah, maybe what you can try is open up a Finder window while you have your Photos app open instead of Inkscape, and then I think you should be able to drag stuff from there into, your documents or your desktop. So like, I think I should be able to drag it and drop it like this. Let's go to desktop. And then, yeah, so then it does show up on my desktop. So maybe it'll just have to be an extra step for you where you have to drag stuff into like a folder on Finder before Inkscape can see it. Because I do know there is a problem with Inkscape seeing stuff that's actually inside the Apple Photos program, because they do make it a little hard to find. I don't know exactly why it's like that. So like, yeah. Try that out and see if that helps. Dragging something from Photos. You might even try like when you can see it on your computer, drag it from that place into Inkscape. Or if that doesn't work, drag it from your photos to the to a folder in Finder, and then you should be able to find it on Inkscape from there.
All right, do we have any other questions before we end the session?